My name is Meredith Caldwell. I'm 46 years old. At 11:32 on a cold Tuesday night, I stood in the parking lot of the Motel 6, off Route 29, and watched my husband's silver Lexus sitting 3 spaces from the office, its windshield shining under a broken yellow light. The hood was still warm. I knew because I touched it. Not with anger, not with trembling fingers. I laid my palm flat against the metal the way a doctor might check a fever. The November air smelled like wet asphalt, truck exhaust, and the stale coffee drifting from the lobby vending machine. Behind me, semis hissed along the highway. Ahead of me, a second-floor curtain moved in room 214. My husband, Patrick Caldwell, had told me he was in Richmond for a supplier meeting. He had kissed my cheek at 6:15 that morning, adjusted his navy tie in the hallway mirror, and said, "Don't wait up, Mur, it'll be late." I didn't wait up. I followed the toll alert instead. The one he had forgotten still came to my email because I had opened the account 18 years earlier when we bought our first car together, and he still needed me to remember passwords, bills, receipts, and the 1,000 invisible tasks that made his life look effortless. At 8:46, the toll pass attached to his Lexus pinged at the Westbrook exit. At 9:12, the car entered the parking lot of a motel 6 miles from our house. At 9:35, I was sitting in my dark kitchen with my laptop open, looking at a live transaction from his personal credit card for $79.43. Motel 6. 1 room. 1 night. Patrick was not in Richmond. Patrick was not in a supplier meeting. Patrick was in room 214 with someone who had sent him a text the week before that said, "I hate sneaking around, but I love how brave you are." Brave. That was the word she used for a married man booking a highway motel with money from a joint life. I sat in my kitchen until 10:18. I remember the exact time because the oven clock had been running 7 minutes fast for 3 years, and that night I finally corrected it. I pressed the small gray buttons until the green numbers matched my phone. It felt important that at least one thing in that house tell the truth. Then I opened the drawer beside the dishwasher and took out the large manila envelope my attorney had prepared 2 days earlier. Divorce petition. Temporary financial restraining order. Affidavit. Copies of bank transfers. Copies of motel charges from 4 prior Thursdays. Copies of messages Patrick did not know I had seen. And 1 signed letter from the woman who had contacted me at 2:07 that afternoon, not because she was his mistress, but because she was not the first woman he had used that motel for. I put on my camel coat, locked the house, and drove 23 minutes through light rain to the highway exit. When the motel clerk asked if I needed a room, I said yes, something on the 2nd floor. He gave me room 212, the room next door. I paid in cash. I signed the register with my full legal name. I asked for no special favor, no confrontation, no drama. At 11:28, I climbed the outdoor stairs with my overnight bag in one hand and the envelope tucked beneath my arm. I could hear the television through the thin wall before I reached my door. A woman laughed. Patrick said something too low for me to make out. I stood outside room 214. The gap under the door was wide enough. I knelt in the hallway, slid the envelope under with 2 fingers, and watched it disappear into the warm yellow strip of light on the other side. Then I walked into room 212, locked the deadbolt, set my phone against the wall, and pressed record. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of a motel bed with a floral comforter that smelled faintly of bleach and listened to my husband find the end of our marriage on the carpet. What he didn't know was that the papers under his door were not just divorce papers. They were the first page of a case he had been writing against himself for almost a year. What he didn't know was that the woman in that room had already sent me screenshots, voicemail recordings, and hotel photos because Patrick had promised her a future with money he had been quietly stealing from our retirement account. What he didn't know was that the following morning, at 10 o'clock sharp, he was expected at a community foundation board meeting where he planned to announce a charity expansion funded by, quote, our family commitment. Our family commitment, that phrase would not survive the morning. This is that story. And before I tell you how a motel room door became the quietest ending I ever gave a man, tell me where in the world you're watching or listening from and what time it is there. I always wonder where these stories reach. If you've ever had to become calm because someone else kept lying, like this video, subscribe and stay with me. Some women do not expose betrayal by shouting in a parking lot. Some slide the truth under a door and let it open from the inside. Patrick and I lived in Belhaven, Virginia, in a cream-colored colonial on Ashbury Court, with a brick walkway and a Japanese maple in the front yard. We had bought it when I was 32 and he was 35, back when we still thought painting a dining room together counted as romance. Patrick was now 49. He owned Caldwell Custom Interiors, a mid-sized renovation and design company that handled kitchens, bathrooms, and historic home restorations across 3 counties. He was handsome in the way men become handsome when they learn exactly what people reward: silver at the temples, perfectly pressed shirts, a deep voice he lowered whenever he wanted to sound sincere. He served on the Belhaven Community Foundation Board. He sponsored the middle school theater program. He knew which wine to bring to a donor dinner and which joke to tell a nervous client. People trusted Patrick because he made trust feel like a room he had prepared for them. I worked as a freelance grant writer and nonprofit consultant. My work was quiet. I wrote proposals, built budgets, tracked restricted funds, and helped small organizations prove they had used money exactly as promised. I knew how donations moved. I knew how accounts were supposed to reconcile. I knew how a person could make theft look like generosity if everyone was too flattered to ask for receipts. For the first 12 years of our marriage, I used that skill to help Patrick grow his business. I wrote his first marketing copy. I edited every proposal he submitted for historic district work. I built the spreadsheet that tracked client deposits, subcontractor payments, supplier invoices, and profit margins. In the beginning, he called me his secret weapon. Meredith sees the whole board, he would say at parties, smiling as if I were brilliant and not simply useful. By year 15, he had shortened that to Meredith worries about numbers. By year 17, it became, she can't relax unless every penny has a label. And by the time I found his car at the motel, it had become, don't make this into one of your investigations. Patrick did not like being questioned. He liked being admired. There is a difference, and most wives learn it too late. Our son, Evan, was 19 and a sophomore at Virginia Tech. Our daughter, Grace, was 16 and still at home, sharp-eyed and tender in a way she tried to hide beneath oversized sweatshirts and sarcastic comments. I had spent years keeping Patrick's moods from touching the children directly. I knew when to intercept a sharp remark. I knew when to make a joke. I knew when to suggest that Grace go study upstairs before Patrick came home annoyed from a job site. That kind of protection is invisible until you stop doing it. Patrick's mother, Linda Caldwell, lived 10 minutes away in a townhouse near the golf course. She believed Patrick had hung the moon and paid the electric bill for the stars. She had never forgiven me for not leaving my career entirely to become his unpaid office manager. At every Thanksgiving, she found a way to say a man builds better when he knows his wife is fully behind him. I used to smile and pass the potatoes. Patrick's younger brother, Dean, worked for Caldwell Custom Interiors as operations manager. Dean was 43, loud, careless, and loyal to Patrick in the way men are loyal when their paycheck depends on not noticing anything. If Patrick was the polished oak front door, Dean was the loose hinge. He revealed things without meaning to. One Sunday in March, at Linda's house, Dean mentioned a client dinner at the Copper Lantern. "That was a nice place," he said, scooping more green beans onto his plate. "You and Tessa looked pretty cozy in the corner booth." The table went quiet for less than a second. Patrick smiled. Tessa was reviewing tile selections for the Kellerman job. Dean blinked, realizing too late that he had stepped somewhere soft. Linda said, "Well, clients do like personal attention." I looked at Patrick. "Tessa." He dabbed the corner of his mouth with his napkin. "Tessa Marlowe. She's a supplier representative from Eastgate Stone. I've mentioned her." He had not. "She handles tile and quartz on a Sunday dinner?" He smiled with that faint correction in his eyes. "Meredith, not every woman I speak to is a scandal." Linda laughed lightly. "Goodness, dear, let the man eat." I did. I let him eat. I let him drive us home. I let him wait until Grace had gone upstairs before he turned to me in the kitchen and said, "That was humiliating." I rinsed a wine glass under warm water. What was? Interrogating me in front of my mother. I asked who Tessa was. "You asked like a prosecutor, because you answered like a witness." His face hardened. "That mouth is going to cost you one day." I turned off the faucet. What does that mean? It means you make people tired. I folded the dish towel slowly. That must be difficult for you. He stared at me, unused to the absence of apology. Then he laughed once. You know, Mur, your problem is that you think being suspicious makes you smart. I placed the wine glass in the drying rack. No, I think being observant keeps me from being fooled forever. That was the first time he called me paranoid. Not loudly, not dramatically. He said it while reaching past me for the refrigerator door. You sound paranoid, he said. It's unattractive. Unattractive. That word was supposed to land where women are trained to bruise. It did, once. By March, it only told me I had touched the right nerve. Tessa Marlowe was 37, divorced, with pale blonde hair and a curated sadness she wore in photographs like jewelry. She posted pictures of sunsets, wine glasses, showroom displays, and quotes about choosing yourself. She worked for Eastgate Stone, one of Patrick's largest suppliers. I found her public profile in under 7 minutes, because people who want to be hidden do not usually post from restaurant patios with location tags. At first, I thought the affair was only with Tessa. That was almost quaint. In April, I found the Motel 6 charge. It was buried on a personal credit card statement Patrick had stopped sending to the house and started receiving electronically. He forgot that the backup email was mine. $76.82. Motel 6, Westbrook Highway, Thursday night. When I asked him where he had been that Thursday, he said, Richmond? With whom? Suppliers. Which suppliers? He looked up from his phone. Why? I'm asking. No, he said, you're fishing. I'm your wife. You're acting like an auditor. I am an auditor. You write grants. I follow money. His mouth tightened. There it is. What? That tone. What tone? The tone that makes it impossible to come home. I watched him carefully. Patrick, where were you Thursday night? He leaned back in his chair. If you have already decided I'm guilty of something, why do you need me to answer? That was how he avoided truth. He turned every question into a character flaw in the person asking it. The next morning, he brought coffee to my office doorway. I was harsh last night, he said. I looked up. Yes. I'm under pressure. I know. The foundation campaign, the Kellerman job, payroll, suppliers, it's a lot. I know. He stepped inside and set the mug on my desk. I need my home to feel like home, Mur, not like another place where I'm being audited. I looked at the mug. Cream, no sugar. Correct. A small thing from a man who remembered details when they served him. Then don't give me reasons to audit it, I said. His face changed so slightly that most people would have missed it. I did not. In May, I started keeping records. Not because I had decided to divorce him, not yet. I started because I needed proof for myself. There is a humiliation in being lied to that people rarely name. It is not only the betrayal, it is the way lying makes you doubt the basic function of your own eyes. A receipt becomes a question. A pause becomes a question. A smell on a shirt becomes a question. You begin to feel ridiculous for living inside reality. So I built a second reality out of documents. I made a folder called Garden Plans because Patrick never opened anything that sounded domestic. Inside it, I created monthly subfolders. I saved statements, screenshots, toll records, supplier invoices, calendar entries, deleted social media posts, and photos of the odometer when Patrick left and when he returned. I did not hack his phone. I did not break into his accounts. I did not do anything that would make my attorney sigh at me later. I simply stopped throwing away the things he assumed I would not understand. By June, the toll alerts had formed a pattern. Westbrook exit. Thursdays. Between 8:40 and 9:20 at night. Return after midnight. Motel 6 charges appeared twice. Then he switched to cash. Then the charges disappeared, but the tolls stayed. In July, I found cash withdrawals from the business account disguised as petty job site expenses. $300, $450, $275. all near Thursdays, all coded under miscellaneous client materials. I knew enough about business accounts to know that sloppiness can mimic fraud, but Patrick was not sloppy with money. He once called a subcontractor over a $40 discrepancy in caulking costs. He was careful when money mattered to him, which meant the missing money mattered. I waited until Grace left for summer camp in North Carolina before I called an attorney. Her name was Judith Vance. She was 62, wore navy suits without jewelry, and had the calmest handshake I had ever felt. Her office overlooked a courthouse square where oak trees cast shadows over parked cars and people walked into legal endings carrying paper cups of coffee. I brought a binder. Judith looked at it, then at me. "You're organized." "I've been called worse." She opened the binder and read for 20 minutes without interruption. Her pen moved occasionally across a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she removed her glasses. "Do you want a divorce?" I looked out the window at the courthouse steps. I want the truth to stop depending on his mood. That was not my question. "No," I said. "I don't want a divorce." Judith nodded once. "But you may need one." "Yes." She tapped the binder. "You have indications of infidelity. You also have possible dissipation of marital assets and questionable business transfers. If charitable foundation funds are involved, that becomes a separate issue." "I don't know that foundation money is involved." "Good. Don't say it unless you know it." "I won't." "Your husband serves on the board?" "Yes." "Does his company receive any work through foundation donors?" "Informally, referrals, renovations for donors, event staging. He donated services last year for a community center remodel." Judith wrote something down. "Meredith, your strength is documentation. Do not let emotion make you sloppy. Preserve, don't provoke. Ask questions in writing when appropriate. Keep your home stable for your daughter. And do not confront him with the full scope of what you know." "I haven't." "Good." She paused. "One more thing. Men like this often assume the wife wants confession. Confession is not the prize. Clarity is." I thought about that sentence all the way home. Clarity is. By August, Patrick had grown strangely affectionate. Not loving, affectionate. There is a difference there too. He kissed my shoulder when passing behind me in the kitchen. He brought home flowers. He suggested we take a weekend trip after Grace started school. He called me Myrrh in front of other people with a softness that made me look unreasonable if I did not soften back. But his phone stayed face down. His passwords changed. His shirt smelled like Tessa's vanilla sandalwood perfume. And every Thursday, some version of Richmond appeared on his calendar. On August 24th, I followed him for the first time. I did not feel proud of it. I parked behind a pharmacy across from the Motel 6 and watched his Lexus pull into the lot at 9:06. A red Mazda arrived 9 minutes later. Tessa stepped out wearing jeans, a cream coat, and heels too high for wet pavement. Patrick met her at the stairs. He kissed her before they went up. Not quick, not nervous. A familiar kiss. I took 3 photographs through my windshield. They were grainy, but clear enough. Then I drove home with my hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, exactly as my father had taught me when I was 16. At a red light, my chest tightened. I did not cry. I counted backward from 20. I got home at 9:48, washed my face, and packed Grace's lunch for the next day. Ham sandwich, apple slices, pretzels, a note that said, "Good luck on your chemistry quiz. You know more than you think." I placed the lunch bag in the refrigerator. Then I sat at the kitchen island and laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because I had spent years teaching my daughter confidence while modeling endurance. That was the moment I stopped being Patrick's witness and started becoming my own. In September, the second woman appeared. Her name was Brooke Delaney. She was 41, a bookkeeper for a landscaping company that did work for several of Patrick's renovation clients. She contacted me through my professional website on a Monday afternoon. Subject line, "I think we need to talk about Patrick Caldwell." I opened it at 2:07 while drinking tea at my desk. The message was short. "Mrs. Caldwell, I know this is painful. Patrick told me you were separated and that the divorce was private because of your daughter. I recently learned that was not true. I have information about him, Tessa Marlowe, and money he asked me to move through invoices. I am sorry. I should have checked sooner. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Judith. Judith called at 2:26. Do not respond yet, she said. I won't. Do you know this woman? No. Do you believe her? I believe she knows details she shouldn't. Good answer. I'll arrange contact through my office. Brooke gave a statement 2 days later. Patrick had met her at a donor event in January. He told her our marriage had been over, in every way but legally. He told her I was fragile, controlling, and using our daughter to delay the inevitable. He told her he was staying in the house only until Grace finished the semester. He used the word noble. Brooke believed him for a while. Then she saw him with Tessa. Then she found out he had used a landscaping invoice to pass through a payment for, quote, consulting support that appeared to have nothing to do with landscaping. She asked questions. Patrick told her she was overreacting. Then he ghosted her for 11 days. Women become very clear when a man who lied to them starts insulting their intelligence. Brooke sent screenshots, voicemails, a photo from inside room 214 at the Motel 6, taken in March, showing Patrick's watch on the nightstand. She sent a message where Patrick wrote, I just need to keep Meredith calm until the foundation expansion is announced. After that, the money issue resolves itself. Money issue. Those 2 words changed everything. Judith brought in a forensic accountant named Samuel Price. He had kind eyes, a soft southern voice, and absolutely no mercy for bad bookkeeping. Within 3 weeks, Samuel found a trail connecting Caldwell Custom Interiors, Eastgate Stone rebates, inflated supplier credits, and a restricted pledge account connected to the Bellhaven Community Foundation's community housing expansion. Patrick had not stolen directly from the foundation in the simplest way. He was too vain for simple theft. He had created an arrangement where his company received preferred referrals and supplier rebates tied to foundation donor projects. Some rebate funds that should have been disclosed were routed into a business reserve account. From there, portions were withdrawn as consulting expenses, cash, and payments that seemed connected to Tessa and Brooke. It was not elegant. It was arrogant. Judith explained it to me in her conference room on October 6th. Your husband appears to have used his public charity role to create private financial benefit. I looked at the spreadsheet in front of me, and he planned to announce an expansion. Yes. With our name attached. Yes. Our family commitment. Judith's mouth tightened. That phrase appears in the draft remarks we obtained from the foundation packet. I pressed my fingertips to the edge of the table. If this comes out after he announces it, it looks like I knew. It could raise questions. I didn't know. I know. But I helped him with proposals for years. Yes. And he will say I was involved. Judith did not comfort me falsely. He may try. I looked down at the spreadsheet again. Then we do it before he can. Judith studied me. We disclose through proper channels. Who? Foundation counsel, potentially the board chair, depending on the evidence, possibly law enforcement or civil authorities later. But first, carefully. I nodded, carefully. That word became my religion. Carefully, I moved half of our liquid savings into a separate account under Judith's instruction, preserving records and not hiding anything. Carefully, I copied tax returns, business filings, loan documents, and insurance policies. Carefully, I documented household valuables. Carefully, I prepared Grace for the idea that adults sometimes separate without making her responsible for their sadness. That was the hardest part. On October 14th, Grace came into my office at 9:17 at night, wearing plaid pajama pants and one of Evan's old hoodies. Mom? I looked up. What is it, honey? Are you and Dad getting divorced? The question arrived without warning, and yet some part of me had been waiting years for it. I took off my reading glasses. Come sit with me. She sat in the chair across from my desk, folding her legs beneath her. Did he cheat? I closed my laptop. Grace, I'm not 8. I know. I've heard things. What things? He talks in the garage. And he thinks I can't hear when he says your name like it tastes bad. That broke something in me quietly, not because she knew, because she had known alone. I'm sorry, I said. She looked at the floor. Did he? I chose my words with care. There are things between your father and me that are adult problems. I won't put details on you that you didn't ask to carry, but yes, he has been dishonest in ways that hurt this family. Grace's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She was too much like me. Are we going to be okay? I moved around the desk and sat beside her. Yes. How do you know? Because I am going to make decisions based on truth now. She nodded slowly. Does he know that? No. Good. I almost smiled. Patrick came home 20 minutes later carrying takeout sushi and a cheerful voice. Ladies, I come bearing dinner. Grace stood. I already ate. He looked at me. What's wrong with her? I said, she's tired. He placed the bag on the kitchen island. Everyone in this house is always tired. No one answered. By November, Patrick was preparing for the foundation board meeting, like a man polishing his own statue. The announcement would be held at the Belhaven Art Center, a renovated brick building downtown with arched windows and a small auditorium. Donors, board members, contractors, and local press were invited. Patrick planned to unveil the Caldwell Family Housing Fund, a program he said would help low-income families repair aging homes. The name made me physically still the first time I saw it. Caldwell Family. He had attached my children to money he had tainted. That was the line. Not the motel, not Tessa, not Brooke. Not the perfume, the lies, the insults, the Thursday nights. The line was seeing my family name on a banner printed with funds he could not explain. On November 7th, Judith filed the divorce paperwork and prepared the temporary financial orders. On November 8th, she delivered the preliminary evidence packet to the Foundation's outside counsel under formal confidentiality. On November 9th, the Foundation chair, Helen Whitcomb, requested a private meeting. Helen was 68, a retired judge with white hair, red glasses, and a reputation for ending conversations by removing her glasses and letting people hear their own nonsense. I had met her at 3 donor events. Patrick admired her publicly and mocked her privately. She thinks ethics are a personality, he once said. At the meeting, Helen sat across from Judith and me in a conference room at the Arts Center. Foundation counsel sat beside her. Samuel joined by video. Helen read the summary. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Caldwell, do you stand by this documentation? Yes. Did you participate in any of these arrangements? No. Did you benefit knowingly? No. Why come forward now? I folded my hands. Because my husband intends to use our family name tomorrow morning to legitimize a fund tied to undisclosed financial conflicts. I cannot let my children's name become a cover for his choices. Helen watched me for a long moment. Then she removed her glasses. That is a clear answer. The board did not cancel the meeting. That surprised me. Helen explained why. If we cancel without explanation, Patrick controls the story. If we proceed with adjusted agenda, the board controls governance. Judith agreed. There would be no ambush by me, no speech, no dramatic reveal from a betrayed wife. The foundation would address the matter publicly, but carefully. Patrick would be removed from the board pending investigation. The Caldwell Family Housing Fund would be withdrawn. An independent review would be announced. Do you want to attend? Helen asked. No, Judith said immediately. I looked at her. She turned to me. Meredith, there is no legal reason for you to be in that room. Helen said, there may be a personal one. Judith frowned. I understood both women. The lawyer wanted protection. The judge understood witness. I thought about Grace. Evan. My years of sitting beside Patrick while he turned my labor into his generosity. My name on his programs. My writing in his speeches. My hand behind his public goodness. I want to attend, I said. Judith exhaled through her nose. Then you will sit beside me, and you will say nothing unless I tell you to. I can do that. Helen's mouth curved almost imperceptibly. I suspect you can. That night, Patrick told me he had to drive to Richmond. The lie was so familiar by then that it almost sounded sentimental. He stood in our bedroom doorway at 7:03, wearing dark jeans and a gray sweater. "Supplier issue," he said. "I'll be back late." I looked up from folding laundry. "Tonight? Can't be helped? You have the foundation meeting tomorrow." "I know. That's why I need to handle it now." "What supplier?" He sighed. "Meredith, not tonight." I folded one of his white undershirts. "Not tonight what?" "Not the suspicion routine." I placed the shirt in the drawer. "You're right. Not tonight." He stared at me, uncertain. Then his face softened with relief, because he thought I had chosen surrender. "I appreciate that," he said. At 7:19, he left. At 8:46, the toll alert arrived. Westbrook exit. I waited until 9:12, when the credit card pinged. $79.43. Motel 6. Room 214. At 9:30, I called Judith. "He's there." "Do not go." "I'm going." "Meredith." "I am not confronting him. I am serving him." "We can serve him tomorrow." "No," I said. "Tomorrow he will try to stand under our family name. Tonight he can learn he no longer has access to it." Judith was quiet. "Take someone with you." "No. That is not advice." "I understand. If you insist on going, do not knock. Do not enter. Do not engage. Do not trespass beyond public access. Do not create a scene. Do not speak to the woman. Do you hear me?" "Yes." "Call me when you leave." "I will." I put the envelope in my bag. Then I drove to the motel. The parking lot looked smaller than it had in August. Maybe because fear takes up more space before the truth arrives. Rain glazed the pavement. A soda machine buzzed near the stairs. The office window displayed a plastic sign that said vacancy in red letters. I touched the hood of Patrick's Lexus. Warm. The motel clerk was a young man with tired eyes and a silver ring in his eyebrow. He did not look up from his phone until I placed cash on the counter. "One room?" he asked. "Yes." "Smoking or non?" "Non." "Second floor if you have it?" He slid a form toward me. 212. I signed my name. He handed me the key card. "Checkout's 11. "Thank you." The stairs were wet. I climbed slowly, holding the railing. Room 214 was halfway down the walkway. The curtains were closed, but light glowed around the edges. The television murmured. A woman laughed. I stood outside the door for 13 seconds. I know because I counted. Not to calm myself. To mark the last seconds of being married to a version of Patrick that still lived in other people's minds. Then I knelt. The concrete was cold through my slacks. The envelope slid under the door with a soft scrape. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the television quieted. A woman said, "What is that?" Patrick's voice answered, too faint to catch. Paper rustled. Silence. Then Patrick said, clear enough through the door, "No." One word. Small, naked, real. I stood and walked into room 212. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and old carpet. The bedspread was green and orange with a pattern that made me think of bad wallpaper. I set my overnight bag on the chair, leaned my phone against the shared wall, and pressed record. Virginia's laws were not something I played with, and Judith had warned me carefully. I was recording only in my room, my own notes, my own safety, and any sounds clearly audible through the wall without intrusion. Whether it would ever be used did not matter. Preservation mattered. On the other side, Patrick's voice rose. "She knows." Tessa said, "Knows what?" "Everything." "What does that mean, everything?" "I don't know. The papers are here." "What papers?" "Divorce." A pause. Then Tessa said, "You told me she already knew you were leaving." Patrick said nothing. She said it again, sharper. "You told me she knew." "Tessa, this is not the time." "Not the time? I am in a motel off the highway with a married man who apparently just got served divorce papers under the door." I sat on the edge of the bed. Patrick said, "Keep your voice down." Tessa laughed, and this time there was no perfume in it. "Oh, that is rich." Then came footsteps, a drawer opening. The thud of something being stuffed into a bag. Patrick said, "Wait." "No." Tessa. "No, you said the money would be clean after tomorrow." My entire body went still. Patrick hissed, "Do not talk about that here." She said, "You said the fund announcement fixes it." Tessa. "No, I am done being lied to." The door to room 214 opened hard enough to hit the exterior wall. I moved toward my peephole. Tessa stepped onto the walkway wearing a black coat over a red dress, heels in one hand, overnight bag in the other. Her face was pale, furious, and younger than her photographs. Patrick followed wearing his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "Tessa, stop!" She turned. "You told me Meredith was unstable." My name sounded strange in her mouth. Patrick glanced around the walkway. "Lower your voice." "You told me she was clinging to you." "Tessa, you told me you were protecting your daughter from a breakdown." He reached for her arm. She stepped back. "Do not touch me." Several doors opened along the walkway. A man in room 210 looked out. A woman in room 218 pulled her cardigan around herself. The motel clerk appeared at the bottom of the stairs, looking irritated. Patrick noticed the audience and changed instantly. "Tessa, you're upset," he said gently. "Let's not do this publicly." She stared at him. "Oh, now you care about public?" I watched through the peephole. My hand rested flat against the door. I did not open it. I did not step out. I let the hallway receive him. Tessa walked down the stairs without looking back. Patrick stood there for several seconds, breathing hard, holding the envelope in his left hand. Then he looked directly at my door. He knew. For a moment, I thought he might knock. Instead, he walked back into his room and slammed the door. My phone lit up 30 seconds later. Patrick. Then again. Then again. At 11:56, he texted, "Open the door." I did not. At 11:58. "Meredith, I know you're next door. Open the door right now." I did not. At 12:02. "You have no idea what you've done." I sat against the headboard and typed one sentence. "All communication goes through Judith." Then I turned my phone face down. I slept for perhaps 2 hours, broken into pieces by highway noise and adrenaline. At 4:41, I woke to the sound of Patrick's Lexus starting below. I went to the window and watched the taillights disappear toward the ramp. By 5:15, I was driving home beneath a gray morning sky. Grace was still asleep when I entered the house. I changed clothes, made coffee, packed her lunch, and placed a note beside her backpack. "I have a meeting this morning. I love you. Call me if you need anything." At 8:30, Judith picked me up. She did not comment on my appearance, which I appreciated. My hair was pulled into a low knot. I wore a black dress, gray coat, and the pearl earrings my father had given me when I graduated college. In the car, Judith said, "Did you speak to him?" "No." "Did you engage with Tessa?" "No." "Did he threaten you?" "In text." "Forward them." "I did." She nodded. "Good." After a long silence, she said, "Are you all right?" I looked out the window at bare trees passing in neat rows. No. That is also a clear answer. The Belhaven Arts Center auditorium was almost full when we arrived at 9:41. Donors filled the front rows. Board members sat near the aisle. Local reporters stood in the back with notebooks and cameras. A banner hung near the stage. Caldwell Family Housing Fund. My stomach tightened when I saw it, not because I was afraid. Because names matter. Patrick stood near the podium in a charcoal suit, speaking with 2 donors. He looked tired, but composed. He had always been good at repairs that showed. Then he saw me. For 1 second, his face lost its arrangement. Then he excused himself and crossed the room. "Meredith," he said softly, "a word." Judith stepped slightly forward. "No." His eyes flicked to her. "This is between my wife and me." Judith smiled without warmth. "Not anymore." Patrick lowered his voice. "You shouldn't be here." I looked at the banner. My name is on that. His jaw tightened. "You did this." "No," I said. I stopped lending my silence to it. He leaned closer. "You think you're clean?" You wrote half my proposals? You helped build this? I looked at him steadily. I helped build a business? You built a hiding place. His face darkened. Helen Whitcomb approached then, wearing a dark plum suit and red glasses. Patrick, she said. He turned, rearranging himself. Helen, I was just speaking with Meredith. I can see that. This is a personal matter. Helen removed her glasses. Is it? The room seemed to draw toward us without moving. Patrick noticed. He smiled. Helen, surely we can discuss whatever concern has been raised after the announcement. These families are counting on us. That was Patrick at his most dangerous. Not cruel, noble. Helen looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, the agenda has changed. Patrick's smile held, but only by force. I'm sorry? The board met early this morning. You did what? Helen's voice remained low. The fund announcement is withdrawn pending independent review. His face went still. You can't do that. We can. I chair the expansion committee. You chaired it. His eyes moved toward the donors, the reporters, the board members, watching too carefully to pretend they were not. Helen, he said, quieter, do not embarrass this foundation because of my wife's emotional reaction. There it was, not dramatic this time, emotional, a sibling word, a cousin, a familiar room. Helen turned her head slightly toward me. I said nothing. She turned back to Patrick. Mr. Caldwell, the board's concern is based on financial documentation, vendor records, and statements from parties connected to your company. Mrs. Caldwell's emotions are not on the agenda. A photographer's camera clicked once from the back of the room. Patrick heard it. His mouth tightened. Helen walked to the podium. Judith guided me to a seat in the second row, far enough from Patrick not to perform intimacy, close enough that my name could not be used without my presence. At 10 o'clock sharp, Helen addressed the room. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Today's program was intended to announce a new housing fund. Before we begin, I need to share a change on behalf of the Bellhaven Community Foundation Board. Patrick stood near the side of the stage, rigid. Helen continued. The board has received credible documentation requiring independent review of potential undisclosed conflicts of interest related to vendor relationships and proposed funding structures. Effective immediately, the Caldwell Family Housing Fund is withdrawn from consideration. Patrick Caldwell has been suspended from all foundation duties pending review. The auditorium became profoundly silent, not empty, full of all the words people were not saying. Patrick stepped forward. This is outrageous. Helen looked at him over her glasses. Patrick, please sit down. He did not. I have given this foundation years of service. Helen said, that service is now part of the review. A donor in the front row whispered, Oh my Lord. Patrick pointed toward me. This is a divorce tactic. The room turned. I felt Judith's hand lightly touch my wrist. A warning, a support, maybe both. Patrick kept going. My wife is angry because our marriage has been difficult. She has chosen to drag private pain into public work. I am sorry all of you have been pulled into her. He stopped before choosing the word, but everyone heard the missing shape. Helen said, Finish the sentence if you believe it belongs here. Patrick looked at her, then at me, then at the banner with our family name. His face shifted through calculations too fast to hide. I stood. Judith leaned toward me. Meredith? I know, I said softly. I did not walk to the podium. I did not take a microphone. I stood where I was, in the second row, with my coat folded over my arm. My only statement is this, I said. I did not bring private pain into public work. I brought public records into the room where they belonged. No one moved. Patrick laughed once, sharp and false. You always did love sounding righteous. I looked at him. No, Patrick, I loved believing you were. That landed harder than I expected. Not on him, on the room. Because public men are often protected by the memory of who people wanted them to be. Helen nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Foundation counsel stepped to the side of the podium and announced that questions would be handled after formal review, that the foundation had retained independent counsel, and that donor funds connected to the withdrawn proposal would remain restricted and untouched. A reporter raised a hand. Helen said, No further comment at this stage. Patrick stood frozen near the stage, no longer centered, no longer guiding the room, no longer able to turn charm into weather. Then Dean entered through the side door. His face was flushed, phone in hand. He looked at Patrick and said, too loudly, "Pat, Eastgate just called. Tessa's lawyer sent them something." Every head turned. Patrick closed his eyes for half a second. That was the public payoff. Not a slap, not shouting, not a wife throwing photographs across a room. Just a man discovering that lies do not collapse one at a time. They collapse like shelving when the wrong screw finally gives. Helen turned to security. "Please escort Mr. Caldwell to a private room." Patrick looked at me then, and for the first time in 18 years there was no sentence prepared, no correction, no accusation elegant enough to rescue him. Only the envelope I had slid under a motel door, now unfolding everywhere. He passed me on his way out. "Meredith?" he said, barely audible. I looked straight ahead, not because I hated him, because if I looked at him as my husband, I might forget that he had already stopped being one, long before I arrived at that motel. The aftermath was not clean. People like tidy endings because they do not have to live inside them. Patrick tried everything. First, apology. He sent flowers to the house with a card that said, "I lost my way. Please let me come home." I left them on the porch until the petals browned. Then, blame. He texted, "You humiliated me in front of the entire town." I forwarded it to Judith. Then, nostalgia. He emailed me a photograph from our 10th anniversary trip to Charleston, where we stood beneath a live oak tree smiling like the future had signed a contract with us. Under it, he wrote, "This was real." I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I replied through counsel, "Please direct all communication regarding the divorce to my attorney." It had been real. That was the hard part. A betrayal does not erase every good morning, every hand held in a hospital waiting room, every joke whispered during a boring fundraiser, every Christmas Eve when the children fell asleep under blankets on the couch and Patrick carried them to bed. That is why leaving hurts. Not because the lie was beautiful, because the truth once was. Grace cried the night I told her the divorce had been filed. Not dramatically, not loudly. She sat at the kitchen table with her sleeves pulled over her hands, while I explained that her father and I would both love her, that none of it was her fault, that the court would help decide practical things, and that she did not need to choose a parent to prove loyalty. She listened. Then she said, "Did he use our name for money?" I closed my eyes briefly. There are questions about that. That means yes. It means adults are reviewing it. She looked at me with 16-year-old impatience. "Mom?" I sat across from her. "Yes. I believe he used our family name to protect things he should not have done." She nodded once. "I hate him." "No, you don't have to decide that tonight." "I do." "You can be angry tonight. You can be confused tomorrow. You can miss him next week. You are allowed to have more than one feeling." She cried then. I moved beside her and held her while the kitchen clock ticked with its newly corrected time. Evan came home from college that weekend. He walked into the house taller than I remembered and angrier than he wanted to be. Patrick had already called him. "He said you blindsided him," Evan said. "I'm sure he did." "He said you went nuclear." "I served divorce papers." "At a motel?" "Yes." Evan looked away. "So that part is true." "Yes." "With someone?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. God. I did not fill the silence. Mothers often do that for sons. We rush to soften the father's failure, so the son does not have to look directly at male weakness. I chose not to. Evan sat down at the island. "How long?" "I don't know the full answer." "You know enough." "Yes." He rubbed his hands over his face. "Did he steal?" "That is being investigated." "Mom?" I understood then that my children had inherited my hunger for plain language. "Yes," I said. "I believe he misused money." Evan nodded slowly. Then he said, "Are you okay?" It was the first time he asked me that like an adult. "No," I said, "but I will be." He got up and hugged me. For a long moment, I let my son hold the weight I had spent years keeping away from him. Patrick moved into Linda's townhouse for 6 weeks, which must have been its own punishment. Linda called me 3 times the first week. The first call, she said, "I hope you understand what you've done to this family." I said, I do. The second call, she said, men make mistakes, Meredith. I said, so do women. Mine was covering for him too long. The third call, she said nothing for several seconds. Then, quieter, he lied to me too. That was the first honest thing she had ever given me. I said, I know. She began to cry. I did not comfort her quickly. Not because I was cruel, but because women like Linda had spent decades teaching other women to absorb men's consequences. I would not absorb hers too. The foundation review took 4 months. Patrick resigned from the board before he could be formally removed. Caldwell Custom Interiors lost 3 major donor contracts and 2 supplier relationships. Eastgate Stone terminated Tessa after its own internal review, though rumor said she negotiated quietly and left with enough to disappear into another showroom in another county. Brooke testified through counsel and later sent me one short note. I am sorry I believed him before I believed the evidence. I wrote back. We both did, eventually. That was all. The divorce settlement was harder than it should have been because Patrick fought over things he did not want, simply because I did. He wanted the dining room table until I said he could have it. Then he wanted my grandmother's Dutch oven. Judith actually laughed at that one. He cannot have the Dutch oven, she said. He doesn't cook. He wants it because it is yours. In the end, I kept the house until Grace graduated. Patrick kept the business, reduced and watched. Retirement funds were traced. Misused marital assets were accounted for. The temporary financial order became permanent in spirit, if not in name. The Motel 6 envelope became a story people whispered about for a while. Bellhaven loved details. Some people called me cold. Some called me brave. Most waited to see which opinion would become popular. I learned not to care. Cold is what people call a woman when her pain no longer performs for them. Brave is what they call her after they decide her evidence is respectable. Neither word paid the legal bills. Neither word sat with Grace through nightmares. Neither word rebuilt my sense of time after years of Thursdays being stolen from me. I rebuilt slowly. I repainted the dining room a soft blue Patrick had always hated. I replaced the heavy leather sofa he chose with a cream linen one that showed every mark and felt like honesty. I took down the framed foundation gala photo from the hallway and hung a black and white print of the ocean my father had taken in Maine. On the first Thursday after the divorce finalized, I drove to Westbrook. Not to the motel, past it. I drove past the exit, past the broken sign, past the parking lot where a different silver car sat under the same yellow light. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. The place looked smaller than memory. Most places do, once they no longer hold your fear. I kept driving until I reached a diner 20 miles away, the kind with chrome stools and pie under glass. I ordered coffee and a slice of lemon meringue. I sat alone in a booth by the window while trucks passed on the highway. At 8:46, my phone did not ping. At 9:12, no charge appeared. At 11:32, no door waited for me. There was only a woman drinking coffee, owning her own evening. That was enough. I built it in silence. Not because silence is noble by itself. Silence can be a prison when someone else locks it around you. But silence can also become a workshop. A place where you measure, cut, sand, and assemble a life no one else gets to name. Patrick thought I would scream in the parking lot. He thought I would bang on the motel door. He thought I would become the unstable wife he had described to women who believed him, because believing him made their own choices easier. Instead, I booked the room next door. I slipped the papers under his door. I let the truth enter before I did. That is the lesson I carry now. You do not always need to be present for the moment someone understands what they lost. Sometimes your absence is the message. Sometimes the envelope says enough. Sometimes the quietest action is the one that leaves no room for argument. If you are listening to this while sitting beside a person who makes you feel foolish for noticing facts, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not paranoid because the math is wrong. You are not bitter because the story keeps changing. You are not cold because you stopped begging for honesty. You are allowed to document your life. You are allowed to protect your name. You are allowed to leave without providing one final performance of pain. I thought the worst moment would be seeing Patrick's car at that motel. It wasn't. The worst moment was realizing I was not surprised. The best moment was not the foundation meeting, or the investigation, or the divorce decree, or even the look on his face when the room stopped believing him. The best moment came much later, on an ordinary Thursday evening, when Grace and I ate takeout Thai food at the kitchen island, and she told me about a college she wanted to visit. She laughed at something I said. The house was blue and quiet. The clock was correct. No one was lying about Richmond. No one was using our name to build a false monument. No one was telling me my questions made me difficult. I looked at my daughter, at the takeout containers, at the rain tapping against the kitchen window, and I understood that peace does not always arrive like joy. Sometimes peace arrives like accuracy, the right time, the right name, the right door closing. So tell me, if you found the car, if you had the papers, if the room next door was empty and waiting, would you knock and confront them, or would you slide the truth under the door and walk away? Thank you for spending this time with Meredith's story. Every woman who listens, comments, or quietly recognizes a piece of herself here helps remind someone else that truth does not need to beg for permission. If this story stayed with you, follow Revenge Diary for more stories about women who stopped explaining their pain to people committed to misunderstanding it. The loudest comebacks are built in silence. Sometimes the comeback is not a speech, a scene, or revenge shouted across a room. Sometimes it is an envelope, a locked door, and the first peaceful night you give yourself back.